Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
All set. Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 4th meeting of the Litchfield Planning Board. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, I'll go with the roll call of members. Michael Croto, Chair.
Jared O'Connell, Vice Chair.
Travis Tucker, member.
Letha Riley, member.
Okay, absent this evening is Jeremy Robitaille, Jesse No, and Russ Blanchette, and Steve Gannon, our ex officio member. But we do have a quorum. We don't have our alternate this evening, so we can't appoint for voting of the alternate. First item is public input on non-agenda items not listed on the agenda for this evening. Is there any members of the public that wish to speak to any non-agenda items? And seeing there is nobody here in the gallery, I will close public input on non-agenda items, and we'll get right down to the first order of business, which is the Master Plan Update, Chapter 3, Natural Resources, which, Jay, I understand that you're not ready for this evening.
Not quite.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is taking the prior chapter, updating that, and really heavily incorporating elements from the conservation plan that was adopted by the Conservation Commission, I think, just over a year and a half ago. You also got some comments from Joan, so I'm working those in as well. So do apologize, it's not quite ready for daylight yet, but it will be for our next
We
meeting.
will table that and move on to the second item this evening, zoning amendments work session. And Jay, I'll let you take the floor.
So we've got a couple of items that were still outstanding. So one is the question of changing the definition of a duplex or two-family. So we had a lot of conversation around that last time. The second thing is that it seems we kept the concept of a solar ordinance alive, so I took a stab at a first run at what something might look like, so I'm going to pass that out. So I for whatever reason, I decided to address the duplex issue first through a presentation. Just kind of kicking off with, because we'd had conversations around what is a duplex, what should it look like, what does it mean? So I oh, sorry, Travis, you've got to
I got it here.
turn around. So I put together a few images of different kinds of duplexes. So this is what I called an old style side by side. This one's actually in the French Hill area in Nashua. Very typical. Is old style, built before there were garages. So it's just two units side by side, mirror images. This is similar, but it's a more contemporary one. This is in Dara Village, obviously in Litchfield. Also no garages, side by side, mirror image, just a bit more of a contemporary and local look. This is a new side-by-side duplex in Nashua, very similar to the other ones. This is mirror image. It's obviously one building, which was true, I think, with the other ones. So I guess that was a point I failed to make, but very clearly the examples that we've seen are a building. And in this case, the garages are on either side. This is what we call the dumbbell style duplex. So this is an example you've probably driven by many times on Webster Street in Hudson. In this case, what makes it particularly distinct is that the two residential units don't touch at all. It is the garages that connect them. Whether we consider that a single building or not, I suppose, is an arguable point. And I think, as you would also note, the two individual units are really rather large. They're substantial in size. In the other cases that we saw, though each of those units would tend to be smaller than a typical single-family unit, more akin to a townhouse, just in terms of size and style. Probably layout, I would say, as well. Once again, I threw in, I couldn't find actually a contemporary example. This is a old-style up-down duplex, and it was built to be 2 units. So then the next thing I did was take a look at some different definitions from several communities for what they consider to be a duplex. So first is Litchfield's. It defines a duplex or two-family residence simply as 2 attached dwelling units contained in a single building. Nashua, it's a little bit different, but basically their definition of a duplex is a structure consisting of either 2 separate dwelling units on separate floors or of 2 separate dwelling units connected and separated by a common wall. So that has that common wall element. And again, references the up and down as well as the side-by-side specifically. Hudson, a duplex is a residential principal building with 2 dwelling units, separated either vertically or horizontally by a firewall, and with each unit having its own separate entrance. So, makes sense. This is the first one so far that says 2 separate entrances, and they're specifically saying firewall, not just common wall. Manchester, a 2-family dwelling, is a detached dwelling designed, constructed, altered, or used for 2 adjoining dwelling units, with each dwelling unit having a party wall connecting it with the other dwelling unit, located on one lot, also known as a duplex. So again, very clearly emphasizing that the 2 units are physically connected. Peterborough defines a duplex as a residential building that has 2 residential units, also referred to as a duplex. There was a little bit of other language I didn't include. The 2 residential units shall be connected either by being directly adjacent or connected by a garage or connected by a roofed breezeway or structure. So they're explicitly saying a breezeway is fine. I will just note one other element on the Manchester one was that it emphasized located on one lot. So that, I guess it is possible you could have, I suppose, 2 side-by-side units on their own lots. So then I came up with a couple of suggestions, kind of looking at all of those definitions and depending on which way we want to go, because I think the genesis of this was that the building inspector felt that he needed more clarity around what is a duplex when he sees it. So I took a stab at the first one, which is a duplex or 2-family residence. 2 attached dwelling units contained in a single building, that's what we currently have, and then adding located on one lot, separated either vertically or horizontally by a fire-resistant party wall, or connected by a garage, with each unit having its own separate entrance. Obviously, I was pulling elements out of each of those. And then we could decide to add, if that's our goal, the area of the party wall separating the 2 units, whether or not part of a garage, shall not, oh, I should have had B in there, shall not be less than 50% of the total area of the adjacent side of each dwelling unit. So that's a further complication, but what that does is allows for basically jogging the units so that they don't have to be necessarily side by side completely. Basically, one unit could say be moved forward so long as 50% of that wall connects, it would still work. So let's say the building is 30 feet deep. The connection would have to be at least 15, so it could be jogged. We might want that, we might not want that, but that addressed, I think, the concern that was raised at our last workshop of Don't make it so they just have to be flush. Allow us the flexibility to move them. So again, I think the first suggested one accomplishes that it makes it clear that they need to be connected, but it also does allow, because that seemed to be where the board was going, it allows that connection to be by, a garage. Doesn't have to just be the unit. So in other words, this would allow the dumbbell concept. The addition of the second phrase just makes it clear that you can have the jog. I think you probably could interpret the first one to allow you to have a jog. It doesn't say you can't.
Yeah.
But if we want more clarity around that, then that would make it clear. It would also mean that you couldn't just connect two corners. It would have to be more substantial connection than that.
If we look at the duplex on Juniper Court in Litchfield, I think it was said that it's like a foot wide overlap, and you look at it and yeah, they're pretty far offset, and yeah, it's a pretty big building between the two
Right.
halves.
So essentially, this definition would allow for all of the examples that we previously saw. You could do under this scenario.
The you probably don't need it to be a full 50% overlap, but I would definitely want it probably at least a third, if we're going to be explicit about that. Don't know what other people's thoughts are.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand the issue.
So this is, you have two units that are side by side.
Yeah,
This language, you could have them offset 50% of the area offset. So if you have a side of a house that's 20 feet deep and another unit which is also 20 feet deep, 10 feet of it must be overlapping, which means that in that scenario, 10 feet will stick out on each side.
okay.
This language is to prevent like just basically corners touching of two separate houses that just happen to be so close that they're touching. But I'd say maybe a third of the area makes sense. So in the example I just gave, that'd be around 7 feet of overlap.
So basically, you're feeling generous to provide more options than even just the dumbbell option? Is that how I'm understanding it?
Well, it'll be more restrictive than this right here, which is 1 foot of overlap, which is in Litchfield.
The folks at home were looking at an example duplex on Juniper, you said?
Yep. Juniper Court.
I think like the best way to like explain it for people that can't see is like we could theoretically have like a duplex here, like that are really not touching at all, and how much of that do we want like to overlap, and how much do we want the other to jut out? So if we only have like 33% overlap, they're going to be touching, but it won't be like they could still have the other 2/3 front unit like jutting out, whereas half would be kind of more tempered. Or if we were like really crazy, 70, there's if there was some kind of purpose like aesthetically or functionally that we I don't know particularly like I don't feel a certain way with the number. I feel like 50 is fair, 33 is fair. I feel like that would probably be something that would be good for like a substantive discussion.
I'm wondering how much of that is dictated by the ground that it's on. In other words,
Yeah.
based on the site conditions, you might need to stagger it that way. I mean, I don't
that's
know
true.
what happened in that example, if that was a design preference or just, but, I could totally see an instance where there's, more ledge and, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I know that like Reggie Moreau was speaking to just architectural flexibility for that type of thing, and his argument is probably that it can look better to have them staggered,
Actually, I think it totally looks better in many instances, because otherwise you get this sort of flat surface.
Yeah.
And even with a few peaks in the roof, yeah, that helps break it up, but personally, I'd rather see
Yeah.
a little bit of this going
Yeah.
on.
I find that the old style ones are very boxy looking.
And in that case, I feel like 33% gets the point across without being too restrictive. Like, it still allows a pretty dramatic stagger effect, although we could go lower. But 50 is gonna definitely, that duplex would not be built. So
It's not the same way.
worth thinking about.
Why don't you think it would be built?
Because they don't share enough of the adjacent wall. Like
Would have
the-
had to have been built differently.
Yeah, they would have, the stagger would have just been different. I don't know particularly the ins and out of that lot, but
Because another thing we're preventing here is like some people will just stagger them so much because they just want to just cram 2 dwelling units in a small space in a way that just makes it so that they don't disturb each other at all, which I can understand that desire to not have to deal with your neighbors being on the other side of the wall. But it could get to the point where it's a little excessive and it just looks like you're trying to fit 2 houses right next to each other, which is what we're trying to prevent with this wording.
I think maybe the better starting point is, do we think that there's an issue with the kind of dramatic staggering like that? Because it seems like we're not certain if like we want to kind of push. It seems like this is what we're kind of going back and forth over.
I mean, whether it's 50 or it's 33, right now, I think to the point, if it goes to public hearing, we can get input on that
Yeah.
issue and see how do people feel.
What number do you think would be a good one to send to public hearing? We could go 33%, we could do 30%, 20%.
I think 50 is easier for people to understand, because when you use words like shall not be less than, you know, you have to do the mental gymnastics. I mean, I'm sitting here going, maybe because it's 8:00 at night, but I'm kind of like,
They were supposed to change the
what was that? You know, maybe I'm not the brightest bulb in the room here, but like, you know, you sit there and you're like, okay, scratching your head, whereas 50% you can kind of understand and start a discussion on.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It,
I don't know,
think you're
because
right.
when you start talking about not less than 30%, 33%, like, okay, so are you talking, does that mean 70% or 33%? Do you know what I'm saying? I don't
I
know.
mean, 70% of the side of each one can be visible. not
Yeah.
overlapping.
But you had to explain it,
Yeah.
right? Whereas 50 is like, oh, okay, I get that. And we can debate the finer points
Yeah.
of what one looks like versus another when we have town meeting, maybe.
Yeah, I think that raises a good point. 33% is definitely less restrictive, but I think most people coming in are going to be like, what are we talking about anyways here? So 50 is kind of a good starting point. No matter what number we pick, people are going to kind of ask why and what reasoning. So I think if you think there's a certain translation value to just going with 50 for a public hearing.
If the confusion gets people to come up and ask questions, then that's not necessarily a bad thing.
That's true.
Because participation from the public is, I'd say, a good thing.
They're gonna
So
be running down to running down to our meetings.
I don't think we should go with 50%. So I would rather at least start with a lower number than 50%, so that we have to change it less between public hearings. That's my opinion.
Jay, have you seen any kind of clauses like this in other places, and do they kind of have any numbers, or are we pioneering
No.
frontier here?
I didn't see that in any example. I introduced it because we got the comment from Reggie and
Right.
thought, well, okay, yeah, some architectural flexibility made sense.
Yeah, and I can totally see, like, if you did like a staggered type of scenario like that where it allows for a little privacy in the respective backyards.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean? Of each unit, so that you're here, I'm here, and we're not like adjacent to each other with a row of arborvitaes in between, you know, while we're talking about each other, you know?
I can certainly look to see if I can find some examples. The examples I can think of off the top of my head are all townhouse. but they're usually not that severe of a jog, but it's enough to allow a little privacy and entrances.
Yeah, I can see how that would be more of a concern for townhouses where each one just is multiple next to each other, and a large stagger could cause unusual layouts.
I'll have to think of it. There might be actually an example in Hudson. I'll have to go think about that. I'll think if I can find it. But where you have those are cases where it's a development of duplexes, and they'll also do some staggering for that same reason.
Yeah.
We don't tend to see that in Litchfield. They tend to be, individually built on a couple of lots.
Yeah.
So Peterborough, dwelling, two-family residential building that has two residential units. Also, the two residential units shall be connected either by being directly adjacent, connected by a garage, or connected by a roof, breezeway, or structure.
I'm looking online for examples of using a breezeway to connect them, and I can see how with a good architect it can be good, but otherwise it is not good.
I'm a fan of the breezeway. I grew up with a breezeway between a garage and a house. I'm a huge fan of it, but, I guess I don't understand if you're making all of these exceptions for folks to have design options, why wouldn't you do that one? But,
I think the counter
why
argument,
discriminate?
yeah, would just be that it essentially allows like two separate single-family homes that are just kind of connected by a hallway.
Yeah.
But I just see that point, and at what point are we restricting what and not the other?
Yeah, and I think having the language on the required overlap area will help prevent people from building a very well-built, not a breezeway that is a part of the dwelling, that is tiny and out of place.
So we'll allow the dumbbell, but we won't allow the breezeway. I mean, when I look at it that way, sorry, that's how I see it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. Are people really banging down the doors to build the dumbbell? Like, are they?
I haven't seen it.
The dumbbell's become pretty popular.
Really?
They just built 2 sets on Talent Road, like that.
Yeah, that development that came through that was subdividing some lots on the corner of Talent and Charles Bancroft Highway. Those were turned into duplexes, which ended up being dumbbell ones.
Okay.
I mean, I'm with you. I think if we're allowing the kind of dumbbells, I think we should allow the breezeway in hallway structure, because they kind of seem to come from the same thing where people want to be farther apart and not necessarily on top of their neighbor.
Except
But-
then with the breezeway, you can end up with 2 single-family houses
That
on
look-
one lot.
yeah.
And that's exactly what it looks like, 2 single-family houses.
Yeah, that's true. So I don't know if there's any way to kind of get more detailed than Peterborough's. I don't know.
Depends. That's an example of a staggered duplex. Again, it's not severe. It's staggered enough to kind of give you the architectural differentiation and a little more privacy. But yeah, there's a couple more obviously below. They're all very similar. They stagger, but not greatly.
Yeah. My guess is, back to the breezeway thing, my guess is that Peterborough probably, with some older homes back there, my guess is they probably had homes with detached garages that are fairly close, that they ended up, turning into dwellings, connected them, made duplexes, as an in-law, or, an in-law's not the best example, but maybe for the purpose of having their in-laws there and then it just turning into a duplex is, so again, I'm not fighting for the breezeway, I'm just making a point that if you're going to great lengths to say, hey, let's bring in the dumbbell, you know? But,
The density of Peterborough is definitely pretty different from Litchfield's, where they have a denser interior than we do.
yeah,
I guess maybe the common thread to tie it together would be how much do we, getting at the stagger thing, how much do we want them to touch? Because a garage, at least for the most part, I mean, we have that one example on 4 Juniper, but we can say if they're touching, it's a pretty substantial amount of the building, like from the curb and with your eyes, that is kind of overlapping, whereas a breezeway, it just, you know, if you're looking with your eyes, I think we could make that point, that it's not going to be as architecturally significant as the kind of shared garages between 2 duplexes, if that makes sense. I don't know if that is ringing true.
I would imagine with the dumbbell scenario that it's probably more economically feasible to not build above the garage. But alternatively, if your dwelling units, if you will, are that big, as we saw in the example, I mean, it seems to me that, you know, that economic feasibility can be handled correctly by putting something over the garage and making the other two monstrosities not as big. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the with the vast lot, like the big lot sizes that we have here in Litchfield, you have the room where you don't need to be worried about utilizing all of the available second floor space. Whereas in a denser inner city with smaller lots, that's when the developers would be more inclined to put livable square footage over the garage.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I think this is about a 60,000 square foot lot.
Is that the one on 3A?
On Webster Street.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, it looks like 3 duplexes are in
Yeah,
one
there are
lot.
three. There are 3 in a row, I believe.
Yeah.
Do you ever see scenarios like that where you've got the 2 dwelling units together and the garage is on the end without anything above it? So it's almost like, looks like a graduated step rather than down into a dumbbell? Do you know what I'm saying?
Not usually, but I'm sure there's some examples out there. But yeah, you typically don't. You see more of this.
And is it just because people don't want to share a wall, you know, from one living area to another kind of thing?
Well, in this example, you know, on the screen, that,
Yeah, that you would
I
share a
mean,
wall
that
upstairs.
is one building.
Yeah,
And it's got 2
Yep.
garages, and I suppose they could have put them, they could have designed it either way, where the garages were touching or the entrances were touching. You know, it's a choice. My guess is there's a hallway separating the 2 units on probably both floors, and those are probably bathrooms with a little window. So there's
yeah.
some level of separation, but that's my guess. But that's clearly a building, and again, each of those, I mean, off the top of my head, those look like maybe 1,200 square foot units, probably. When you come to this, I mean, those are 2
Those are 2 homes.
substantially sized
Yeah.
single-family homes.
Yep.
And yeah, they're clearly seeking as much separation as possible between
Yeah.
dwelling units, which
Yeah.
is why they're not putting anything above, but these are pretty substantial.
So if that's the ensuing conversation, then why are we going to such great lengths to make sure that we allow that? I remember hearing Russ's argument that it's, we want to give people flexibility, and I understand that. But, you know, at what point, to your point, does that become not a single family?
Right.
I mean, I mean,
So if you look at Hudson's definition, currently, it was amended a few years ago specifically so that you couldn't do the dumbbell. So that's why they inserted the language where the two dwelling units have to be separated
Yeah.
by a firewall.
Yeah, I mean, I'd almost rather have the conversation of, do we really want to allow that? Because I don't know, if I'm a neighbor, I don't want somebody building that. I don't want to be looking at it. And that's great that it's economical, but I'm
Yeah.
sure there are other economical choices that don't look like that. And I don't think we should be afraid to say that.
Right.
I would agree.
And we can't render an opinion that way once they have followed to the letter, the definition, and they come before us. We have no recourse to say no.
Yeah.
Personally, I'd rather have an option to, say no in advance.
Right. No, I know what you mean.
So if that's where we're going, then the way to get there would be in this definition would be to take out the phrase "or connected by a garage." That would then say the two units have to be connected, by a fire-resistant party wall. And then if we add this, whether it's 33 or 50, then that allows the stagger.
Well, I mean, the Nashua definition is pretty, a structure consisting either of two separate dwelling units or separate floors, or of two separate units connected and separated by a common wall.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is.
Yeah, that's essentially saying the same thing.
Were you there for the planning board meetings in Hudson where they amended the definition to make it so you can't have dumbbells?
No, it was interim to my interim periods, so it actually was right between when that happened.
Do you know what year or so?
I would say 2021 or 2, probably.
Yeah, the
We
one.
can go look in the records for
Right.
that. I'll take a
Now,
look
I
in
will
the
say,
records. The
there is a
planning board.
development, a significantly sized development of all duplexes that actually succeeded in getting a variance. So they are building dumbbells, and they did it by variance. So.
What do you know? What hardship they?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
argued?
what kind of hardship could you argue?
I would be strained to,
Financial's not one of them. Financial wouldn't go.
I actually think it might have been the essence of the argument, but I did not participate. I just remember being surprised at the outcome.
Yeah, and it looks like the plans from Webster Street for the subdivision that allowed those dumbbells was done, signed, approved by the Hudson, New Hampshire Planning Board, date of meeting September 22nd, 2021. So, sometime after that probably is what.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take a look I'll see if I can look between this meeting and next meeting, but basically, there's no limit then to the size of, in the dumbbell scenario, where you've got the garages in the middle, then there is, as long as the building envelope can handle it, correct? There's no limit to the size of those structures on either side of the garage, right?
Yeah, it just has
That's
to fit
right, yeah.
within the setbacks.
Yeah, so as long as it fits in that building envelope, they can build whatever. Okay, yeah. I don't know that I'm comfortable even in allowing that. I don't,
I would agree, and if it seems like we're kind of moving towards the more restrictive definition, which is what we see in a lot of other towns, so I think I'm comfortable with that. And then I think if people want to come articulate concerns about the dumbbells or kind of breezeways, it allows us to have that space rather than we're giving free rein to everything and let's pull back.
I say let them come and seek a variance
Yeah.
with a hardship. Like that option is available to them.
Yeah, and it's not hard for them to connect the two dwelling units,
No.
even if they want a dumbbell-like design. They would just need to have them either go on top of the garage or go behind the garage or both.
So this is the one that got the variance in Hudson?
Oh,
So you can see as they're featuring the houses, they're featuring them as though they were a single family. But if you look at this image in the middle, that's how they're designed.
yeah, that is clearly just
Yeah,
two
that's,
single-family
yep,
houses with.
next to each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they are designed as condexes, so they are also under separate ownership. The ones on Webster Street are also condexes. All right, so I feel that the consensus is that we'll take out the phrase "or connected by a garage." And do we have a consensus? Are we at 50% or 33?
I'd rather 33.
If Jared feels strongly, I don't know, whatever, I don't have an issue.
Yeah.
Good with that too.
Right.
I can't argue it, but sounds good to me if he wants to argue
Okay.
it.
That's enough to prevent weird connections that we are trying to
Right.
prevent.
And we can always change it after hearing,
Yeah.
getting input, so.
Yeah. I just have one last question. I know it's not on here, but Wyndham, they have theirs is almost exactly like what we're going to do for put to public hearing, but they have another sentence that this type of dwelling is not considered an accessory dwelling unit. Is that just redundant, or do you think that there's a certain value to that? I haven't seen that elsewhere.
I haven't either. I don't know that it's necessary, but if we felt it important, we could certainly add it.
I don't see a value, but I was like, maybe
Think-
there was a thought process.
What we should look at our accessory dwelling unit and see if it says anything, like anything to distinguish it from. a
That's probably the
duplex.
place to say it's not a duplex.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like it doesn't hurt to be explicit here, but
Well,
it's not necessary.
and I could be wrong on this, but my understanding is that we cannot require a firewall between an ADU and the principal dwelling, whereas here, we're expressly saying
You have to.
you have to.
Mhm.
Well, but firewall aside, in the basic definition, not having to do with the firewall, though, as I understand it, an ADU could be a duplex, but a duplex can't be a ADU.
Say that again?
The ADU could be one side of a duplex, minus firewall, of course, but not the other way around, where the ADU doesn't have to be a duplex
The-
or part of a duplex.
Yeah, the way I see it is that the ADU is just has looser restrictions on everything except for size and ownership.
Right. And a single-family home with an ADU, for regulatory purposes, is a single-family home.
Mm-hmm.
Good
So
point.
it's- yeah.
Yep, yep,
So
yep.
it's a bit of a
Okay.
nuance.
Okay.
But again, if we think it's clearer, we could certainly add that phrase.
I don't know. I'm just reading through their accessory dwelling unit section. I'll do it after and compare it to ours. They say as regulated in section here. So I was like, maybe they have like a minor sentence or two that's different from ours that might kind of solve that
They might.
circular issue, maybe.
Well, they wanted to clarify that this isn't necessarily an ADU situation. It's a
Right, right.
two-family residence.
And they also prohibit accessory dwelling units associated with multiple single-family dwellings attached to each other, such as townhouses, and with manufactured housing. I don't know. I'll look at that later. Just wasn't sure if there was a value to it.
There could be. So do we want to send it to a hearing as amended, or do we want it to come back next time?
Well, we don't have a full board.
Right.
And I'd like to get input from other people, maybe, or at least give them the opportunity to weigh in on the conversation.
So I'll come back with an amended version for next time, and I'll add as an option the ADU language, and we can see if we want to keep it or not.
Okay.
and Then we can go from there.
Sounds good.
We might get more input on the percentage also, so.
Yeah, and the folks who weren't here tonight can read our discussion in the, or the salient points, if you will, in the minutes and agree, disagree, whatever, but
Right.
If it helps, I have the language that is in our zoning for an accessory dwelling unit.
Yep.
Dwelling unit, comma, accessory, ADU, means a residential living unit that is within or attached to a single-family dwelling or detached from it, and that provides independent living facilities for one or more persons, including provisions for sleeping, eating, cooking, and sanitation on the same parcel of land as the principal dwelling unit accompanies. And that's it.
Okay.
So it's definitely very clear that it's a part of a single-family dwelling.
Right. But we could still make it clearer just in case, so.
Yeah, if someone doesn't read this section, they're not confused.
Right. I think this is increasingly obvious. Those lines are blurring. All right. Okay. So back. So the next one I have is not on the screen. So I am going to hand out paper copies. It's still kind of raw. So you'll notice some formatting issues, etc. So I'll wait till everybody has one, and then I'll just kind of walk through it. You're just handed this tonight, so obviously, it's going to take a little bit of reading through. I'm sure there's more errors that I'll pick up on and more things to think about. So essentially what I did is, you may recall that I distributed copies of a model ordinance from Clean Energy, New Hampshire. And so what I did was go through, 22s, there should be 23s, there we go. So what I did was go through that model ordinance and pull out parts of it that I thought could be relevant to Litchfield. So there's a lot that was in there that I didn't include. And this would be a lot more restrictive, but throwing it out there. So just first of all, it would, I tried to put it into the format of our ordinance. It actually would be section 2300, not 22. Simply titled Requirements for Solar Energy Systems. Not a lot in purpose and objectives. I did reference the two statutes that reference solar energy and how we're supposed to be, it is the goal of the state to provide opportunity, etc. The definitions I took almost verbatim out of the model ordinance. I didn't really see a reason to alter them, but of course, as we read through it, we might decide that it needs to be clearer. Also, there are I'll go back through it for this same thing, but there are some definitions here for terms that we're not using, and so those could probably just go away. The one area where I did vary was under dual-use solar. I thought it was important to make it clear that dual-use solar does not include roof-mounted systems, and it doesn't include solar carports. Again, we might decide we don't like solar carports, but I figured for now, I said that that's not considered dual-use, nor is a solar say a solar panel associated with an electric charger. There's probably more examples as I think about it. If you've seen some of those, permanently mounted speed control, so the ones that say you're going too fast, a lot of those have a solar panel on them. So there might be some other examples we think of out there that wouldn't be considered dual use. So that was different. The rest of
Won't those
You could
consi-
word it like solar panels, powering a single appliance.
that's a way to do it.
Nice. That's good.
You wouldn't consider those off-grid solar because they're self-contained,
Actually, they are.
basically.
You're right. They are off grid. They are off grid. That is true. Also,
But, I mean, to his point, their purpose is to power an appliance
a
of
single
some sort,
appliance. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. That's
thinking
that's
like if you have like solar for your pool heating or something, or,
Right.
to your point, the solar for the signs or whatever.
right. and it excludes ground-mounted systems that are accessory to a residential use. So all rooftop arcs are not considered dual use, and on a residential property, a ground-mounted is not considered dual use. So, and why that's important will come up in a moment. So then kind of going on to the next page, again, I've got some definitions here. We really don't reference solar hot water system, but we might. So they're there for now. If we decide we want to take them out, we can. So the next subsection here deals with general requirements, and we start off with accessory use solar systems. So these are requirements that apply to all solar structures, whether they're permitted by right or not. Again, I did take these largely out of the model ordinance. So just as noted in the first case, so roof-mounted solar energy systems and ground-mounted solar energy systems are permitted as an accessory use in all zoning districts where incidental to one or more permitted primary or secondary, primary or accessory structures. And then it's subject to the following standards. And then it does specifically reference solar carports associated, again, with electrical vehicle charging, et cetera. So again, we may or may not want this, but the way this is structured is, once again, roof-mounted solar, any district, doesn't matter if it's a residential building or commercial building, it's allowed.
Would you see any reason to not allow the solar carports? Those seem fine to me.
So just starting with the roof, that's the roof. I also kept in here ground mounted as an accessory use. So again, we may want to think about whether we want that or not. Again, it's accessory, but we might want to think about that. So the solar carports, personally, I think they're a good thing.
Yeah.
And so I put them in here as allowed. And then once again, the vehicle charging. If we were to keep this, we would also add in what we had just talked about, the, off-grid solar power, for panels or whatever for a single appliance. So we would add that there too. We can come back to that and we can think about what we want to allow or not, but that was, so those are allowed, subject to these following standards. So on height, there is, how they're mounted on a pitch roof is regulated, and on a flat roof, as well, on a pole mounted system as well. So there are some requirements around the appearance. Next, it just notes that ground-mounted solar systems have to meet setback requirements. And then we have screening requirements. So the screening requirements do not apply to residential districts. So the single-family home with a ground-mounted system, you've probably seen driving in Albuquerque, some other places. Again, we might like that or not, but the way this is structured, there's no screening requirement. There is a screening requirement in non-residential districts, and the way that's structured is it has to be adequately screened from view from adjacent residential uses and public highways. So basically, you shouldn't see it. It should be screened from the street. It should be screened from any adjacent residential use with vegetated buffers, fencing, berms, or some combination thereof.
Does that include a single-family dwelling with ground-mounted solar?
No, it only applies to non-residential. Again, we could decide that, but we don't typically see that for residential. Again, some people don't like to see them, so we can discuss that. Right now, I believe it's fair to say in Litchfield, you can install it and it doesn't need to be screened.
We've only got one ground mounted.
Yeah, the one on Albuquerque.
Yeah.
So, once again, we could think about that. I think generally a ground-mounted solar system as an accessory use to a residential use is going to be small.
Yeah.
But we could debate that. Right now, the way this is structured, it's residential.
Yeah, the biggest ground-mounted solar array I've seen is actually in Hollis, Have you seen that one?
Hollis allows them. So yeah, it was controversial. It was.
But yeah, it doesn't seem too much of an eyesore. It's like good for them.
Right. And well, it's one of those balanced things because, communities like Hollis have been very aggressive in promoting solar. They have an energy committee that's very into it. That's the balance. On an acre residential lot, it can be hard to site. If you have to screen it completely, does it still work? But again, that's something we could discuss.
Like the one that is visible from the pedestrian path on Albuquerque, when I saw it, I was like, that's kind of cool looking.
Right, so people have different views clearly, but you can't miss it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So, that's to be debated, we can, that's one of the points I think that needs to be debated. But right now, as this is written, the screening requirements only apply to non-residential. And we're still in the accessory use, not primary use. So this would be kind of like the residence, the example of a commercial building that wants a ground-mounted one next to it for whatever reason. So next is lot coverage. And just to note, roof-mounted, you don't have to screen it. We've already regulated kind of how it looks, but that isn't subject to screening. It doesn't, lot coverage and impervious surface areas requirements don't apply to ground-mounted solar, so long as they have a vegetated ground cover below them. And then turning to page 3, of course, they've got to comply with codes. So the next section references ground-mounted solar energy systems that are either dual use or the primary use of property. So the way this is structured is ground-mounted solar energy systems as a primary use are permitted only as a conditional use and only in the northern and southern commercial industrial service districts. So just kind of going up to the map. This is the northern commercial industrial service district. So you'll note it doesn't abut any residential district. It butts commercial here. It's set back from 3A, and it has transitional district around it, the transitional zone. So in this area, it would be allowed. I contemplated saying it should be allowed by right, because basically no one's going to see it, and if it's ever developed, it's going to be all on the Continental Paving property. But I didn't. I kept it in as a conditional use because I felt that that's the best way of applying the design requirements that go with it. But that's debatable. And then also in the southern commercial industrial district, which is here. So those would be the two places where you could do ground mounted as a primary use, subject to all the various requirements. So that's the first part. There's going to be another, there's going to be one other requirement though that applies.
But in that instance, on the southern side, there's no buffer off of from 3A.
So that's why when we get a little bit further, under setbacks, it says all solar energy systems shall be set back not less than 100 feet from Charles Bancroft Highway. So I put an additional setback in, and that's where that would apply.
And would that buffering still, natural buffers and stuff still apply?
Yes.
Because it's non-residential?
Yes.
Right. Okay.
So going back up to the top though, and this section gets a little complicated, it then goes on to say dual use systems are permitted as a conditional use in the northern and southern commercial service industrial districts, the highway commercial district, and the southwestern commercial districts. So now we're in dual use, got to be two uses, so it's a little bit more liberal, but it's limited to those commercial areas. And then, and this was, we may or may not want this. Then it goes on to say, dual use systems are permitted in the residential district only on parcels of 10 acres or more in association with on-site active agricultural uses. So that's going to be a question mark, but that is that dual agricultural use. I put it at 10 acres. There isn't a magic to that, but that basically means it does have to be a larger lot, has to be in active agriculture. So we can, again, think about that, but that was an option.
Do you think that that wording will prevent people from just putting a solar farm next to a real farm, just separated?
It'll have to be on the same property, and that property will have to be at least 10 acres. So could they be side by side? Sure, they could. They'd still be subject to the rest of the requirements. But again, these are things that we might want to think about. The one example that I'm aware of in our area that pops into mind is Kimball Fruit Farm. If you go to Kimball Fruit Farm, right on the Hollis Pepperell line, they do have ground-mounted solar arrays. I would consider it dual use because of the size, and the other example, I'm not aware of one here, but I know that they do exist, and we can find some images of kind of where they're arrayed, and there's sheep grazing, or there's hay, whatever, they're various agriculture uses. So again, that was the thinking. Moving on from there, the next section on layout. So these would be allowed as a conditional use, but you're seeing the requirements coming after them, A through E on this page, are all requirements that they would have to meet in order to get conditional use approval from the planning board. So the system layout, just basically, it is a little fuzzy, but, they have to show due regard to existing view sheds, has to be adequately screened from adjacent public highways, through the use of vegetative screening, fencing, berms, or existing or created topography. So you're going to have to screen it from view. We have the setbacks. Generally, they have to comply with all setback requirements except for Charles Bancroft Highway. There's a 100-foot setback. It also goes on to say that the power lines and communication lines have to be underground. There is the opportunity, the planning board can allow exceptions because of bedrock, water courses, et cetera. So basically where it's not possible. Going on, fencing is of two kinds. One is to add adequate screening, but the other is for security. So the board may require security fencing if it feels that it's necessary. Stormwater management, it is subject to stormwater management, but the last one, sentence is, and we've kind of talked about this before, ground-mounted solar systems are not considered to be impervious surfaces if the area under the system is vegetative ground cover. Site management, I think that's pretty clear. And then the last one, under dual use, it just states Litchfield encourages the co-location of agricultural uses with ground-mounted solar systems. And, you want to minimize your clearing, et cetera. Then going on to submission requirements, it does stress that, or note that site plan approval is required. I think my ones and A's and B's got mixed up. So you have to have site plan approval. This is just detailing some of the additional requirements. You have to meet all of, site plan review means all of our site plan requirements. So these are, in essence, additional requirements. Obviously, you have to show everything that you're putting out in the field, specifications of the equipment. This also requires that you have an operation and maintenance plan that shows how you're going to upkeep the property. That's kind of similar to what we do with stormwater management, where you have to have an O&M plan. There has to be an emergency response plan so that the fire department understands, how to respond to the site. And then finally, they have to have a plan for decommissioning, the solar array when it's done. So that's the concept. Obviously, there's a lot to digest there.
Yeah, thank you for putting that together.
Thank you.
So a few little edits. I think probably would make sense. It's just kind of, I'll send you a prettier cleaned up one, but I think it probably just makes sense to take some time to read through it and think through it and think about what, do we want to see?
Mm-hmm.
What do we really want to see out there?
And right now, what could they get away with without this ordinance being in place?
So it's hard to say. Because we don't define these solar arrays, I mean, I'd be comfortable in saying, but again, I'm not a code enforcement officer, I would be comfortable in saying that a ground-mounted solar array as a primary use, certainly in a residential district, but probably in most districts, if not all districts, would be a real question mark. I would probably say no. In an industrial district, I think that might be a little bit more of a question mark. I do think that rooftop, again, we don't say. So I don't know how a commercial rooftop system would be viewed. I would think it would be allowed, but we don't say so. So that could cause some ambiguity around, is it allowed or not? Parking canopies, I think that would be a question mark. Is it allowed or isn't it allowed? I'm not sure how we come down on that. I guess it's a way of saying, I do think that for those things that we feel we definitely want to allow, we should probably say so. And those things that we definitely don't want to allow, we should probably say so. So that it's not so if we don't feel that a ground-mounted solar array as a primary use should be allowed anywhere, then it's probably best to say that, and then the ambiguity is gone. If we think it should be allowed under certain conditions, again, I did feel that in those two industrial and commercial service districts, that's certainly where you would allow them if you're gonna. I mean, I shouldn't say that. You could allow them everywhere, but certainly those are places that would have the least impact. And then, the dual use on agricultural property, I think, becomes a question mark. That's one where I think you could see somebody bringing something forward. There's a logic to it, and so how do we address it? If we want to say no, we say no, or do we say yes under these conditions?
Yeah, and a lot of the current agricultural land has high voltage electrical utility lines running through them or adjacent to them. So there's a lot of prime spots that, depending on the requirements of the grid, could be really prime locations for these solar arrays. But yeah, I don't know what the rules are for the interconnections.
Well, right. I mean, that's kind of leaving to the to our industrial districts to just kind of see what is in fact allowed. Northern transitional doesn't allow much. Performance standards. I think I'm missing a page in my ordinance. I am. So that's what I've got so far. I think those are really the only two that are hanging out there. So I was looking to see I was looking to see what we have allow in our industrial districts, but I can't find that in here for some reason.
I think the 4-page document that you put together for us is certainly a lot more manageable than that larger one that was first sent to us. So if we could take this and, spend some quality time and with a red pen and,
Right.
decide how we, what we think and or where the debating points are.
So we can, so I'll clean this up a little bit and maybe we can go over it at our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm looking through our zoning right now to see if I can find it.
Here we go. Oh dear. We do allow sexually oriented businesses in our northern and southern commercial service industrial districts.
Oh, wow.
Mandatory.
Yep.
You gotta allow them somewhere, don't you, by law?
Yep, you do.
Okay, well,
Gravel pit.
The gravel pit, right, yeah.
What use are you talking about?
Sexually oriented
Those are allowed in those
businesses.
districts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so is this the Northern Commercial / Industrial Service District?
Yep.
So yeah, permitted uses: the assembly, testing, repair, and packaging of pre-manufactured components, devices, and equipment systems. B, wholesale businesses. C, research or testing laboratories and laboratories. D, computer services. E, professional offices. F, municipal uses. G, restaurants, not including fast food restaurants with takeout and or drive-through service. H, accessory uses, including but not limited to retailing, personal and professional services, daycare, recreation, auditoriums, and residences for security purposes, which are accessory with and incidental to the principal use. I, churches and associated personages. J, excavation, mining, and processing of aggregate material subject to RSA 155-E and such regulations as may be enacted or adopted pursuant thereto. K, agricultural uses including several in L, utility structures of less than 200 square feet in area.
Yeah. So I'd say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. More to come on some. Okay.
Very good.
That's good.
Well, thank you, Jay.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. So, more to come, and obviously, next workshop. Moving on to number 3 on the agenda, I guess we have release of escrow funds for Thoreau Development LLC at 522 Charles Bancroft Highway. Remaining escrow is $9,179, plus interest. Property is under new ownership as of 10/31/25. Joan?
Correct. That's the gas station property and the storage units that, they did transfer the property October 31st,
Okay.
so Thoreau can get his escrow back, and they will be bringing, the new construction company will be bringing a new amount.
Okay. So, we would need a motion to release the escrow funds. Does anyone want to entertain a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Travis,
Second.
second by Jared. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of a motion to release escrow funds for Thoreau Development LLC at 522 Charles Bancroft Highway, the remaining escrow of $9,179 plus interest, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Anybody abstained? Motion passes 4-0-0. Okay. Thank you. Committee reports. Any reports from any committees? Jay, anything on economic development?
Economic Development Committee met last week, and we're working on the final report, which is really was almost completely there. There were some additional edits that were made. However, there wasn't a quorum. So I'll be holding another meeting next week, and hopefully get a quorum so that we can take final action on the report.
Very good. CIP met last night here in Town Hall. We did the priority of rankings for recommendations for the priority of rankings to Board of Selectmen for the various projects and so forth. We are going to have a public hearing November 18th. Is it the 18th?
November 18th,
Yeah,
planning board meeting.
for the planning board.
Yeah,
It's going to be at the planning board meeting,
At the
I'm
planning
sorry.
Okay.
So we're going to give the presentation of the capital improvement plan to the planning. It will be at the planning board meeting. The public hearing will be held here at the planning board meeting. So we will be doing that, and then that will get forwarded to presentation to the Board of Selectmen, I believe, by December 8th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So, I think we did a pretty good job this year with, getting moving the calendar along with that, so.
Ahead of last year.
Yeah, exactly, although we were a little behind last year, so. But anyway, that's what's happening with that. The Lower Merrimack Local River Advisory Committee will be meeting on the fourth Thursday of this month at Nashua City Hall. And the Conservation Commission meets Thursday. Are we meeting at the fire station, Joe?
No, here.
Here in Town Hall at 6:30. And I think that's all I have. Committee reports. Anything from NRPC, Jay? Or?
Next full commission meeting is going to be November 19th.
Okay. Good. All right.
We did have a pre-construction meeting for the gas station on the 31st of October.
Okay.
All parties were in attendance, and that went very well.
Okay.
I see that the land got cleared in part for that.
They're starting, yeah.
Approval of the October 21st, 2025 minutes. Did anybody have an opportunity to take a look at those? Have any questions, amendments?
I wanted to make one adjustment on page 2, down near the bottom. 4th from the bottom, where it talks about me, and I did express concern that it says, Ms. Riley expressed concern that overly restrictive language could limit architectural flexibility or eliminate specific favored design options. I would just ask you to strike such as dumbbell configurations with garages in the middle, only because I'm open to, I don't remember exactly what was said, but I remember being open to different design configurations, but I don't know that I specified that out. So if you could strike everything beyond the comma after options, just put a period there and strike the such as dumbbell configurations with garages in the middle.
Okay.
That would be appreciated.
All right. Anything else?
I had one thing at the bottom of page 4. Mr. Petropoulos stated that the construction would likely not resume. I think it should say the application would not resume until after the first of the year, because construction isn't anywhere near starting.
Where is that?
Yeah, where's
Page 4, the last paragraph.
working for the commercial units?
Oh, it's page 5.
page
It goes
5.
over to page 5, I'm
Okay,
sorry.
okay, I have 4.
So you want to take out,
I think the construction should change to application,
So, okay, so stated that the application would likely,
not resume, right?
okay, so change construction to application. Okay. Anything else?
Oh, yeah.
Does anyone want to entertain a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
All right, I have a motion by Jared. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Travis. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of approval of the October 21st, 2025 meeting minutes as amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion passes 4-0-0. Okay, thank you.
So this CIP hearing will have to go to the paper for Friday.
I think, yeah, that's
So
what
I'll
we
put it
said
in
last
tonight.
night by Friday, yeah.
What's tomorrow, Wednesday?
Okay.
You're here tomorrow.
No, but I will be.
No, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Let's see. Any other business this evening? Jay, do you have anything?
I do not.
Joan?
No.
Anybody have anything? Okay. So that concludes our business for this evening for the planning board. At this time, our next meeting will be November 18th, and that's when we'll have the public hearing for CIP as well. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Riley. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Travis. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, abstained, motion passes 4-0-0. Thank you for joining us this evening, and we'll see you on the 18th. Have a good night.
A voluntary merger for the 18th. I wonder if I should push that off. Got a lot going on all of a sudden on the 18th.